Listen here, you lazy slob. Today you're getting out of maternity leave and looking for a job. One salary isn't enough for my mom and sister. My husband yelled and slapped me across the face. What I did after that terrified him for real. And before we begin, I ask you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and enjoy listening. An autumn morning slowly crept into the kitchen through the dirty, unwashed windows. Emily sat at the table, absently stirring a cup of tea that had gone cold long ago. Large raindrops slid down the glass, merging into strange patterns, and she thought about how much it all looked like her life, just as gray, shapeless, slipping through her fingers to nowhere. From the nursery came a quiet cry. Little Michael had woken up. Emily sighed, set the cup aside, and went to her son. The 5-month-old baby looked at her with eyes the color of a summer sky, exactly like his father's. Once, those eyes had seemed the dearest thing in the world to her. Now, every time she looked at them, her heart tightened with pain. "Awake, my sweet boy," she whispered, gently lifting her son from the crib. "Mommy's going to feed you now." Settling into the armchair by the window, Emily brought the baby to her breast. Michael latched on eagerly, smacking softly, while she leaned her head back against the chair and closed her eyes. Memories spun in her mind like a scratched record. How did it come to this? Where was the caring, attentive man she had married? And who was this cold stranger who now came home every evening with a stone face? To understand that, she had to go back to that very October evening when it all began. A year and a half ago, Emily Parker was a completely different person. 27 years old, working as a proofreader at a large publishing house called Northern Star, with her own room in a spacious Brooklyn apartment her parents had left her. Her parents, Victor and Tatiana, had been living for several years in a small town upstate, not far from Albany. After a heart attack, her father could no longer stay in the stuffy city. Doctors had strongly insisted on fresh air and peace. The 3-bedroom Brooklyn apartment, which Emily's grandfather had bought back in the 70s, they left to their daughter. "Live here, sweetheart," her mother said before leaving. "The apartment is yours. Your father and I decided everything a long time ago. The lawyer will handle the deed as soon as we collect all the documents." The paperwork, however, dragged on. One certificate was missing, then another, then her father wasn't feeling well, then the lawyer went on vacation. But Emily wasn't worried. What was the rush? Her parents were alive and well, and the apartment wasn't going anywhere. Life flowed calmly and steadily. A job she loved, proofreading manuscripts, finding mistakes, making texts cleaner and better. Friends she could sit with at a cafe on Saturday evenings. Occasionally the theater or an exhibition. But her personal life wasn't working out. A few short romances that ended in nothing, and Emily had already started thinking that maybe she would stay alone. Not that it scared her. She had long learned to enjoy her own company, quiet evenings with a book, walks through autumn parks, morning coffee alone. But sometimes, especially when rain drummed against the windows and the apartment felt too big and empty, she caught herself wishing she had someone close to share that silence with. Everything changed on October 12th, at her colleague Christine's birthday party. They celebrated in a small, cozy cafe called Chestnut, not far from the publishing house. About 20 people showed up, co-workers, friends, and some people Emily didn't know. She came alone, as usual, and settled at a corner table, sipping a glass of white wine and watching the guests. Christine was glowing with happiness, her husband Mark fussed around her, and someone was already dancing to soft music. Emily didn't notice him right away. Tall, dark-haired, with attentive gray eyes and dimples that appeared when he smiled. He was standing by the bar, talking to some man, laughing, and for some reason that laughter struck Emily as surprisingly genuine. Not forced, not strained, like most men trying to impress. Just joyful. Then he turned, as if sensing her gaze. Their eyes met. Later, Emily replayed that moment hundreds of times in her head, trying to understand what was so special about that first look. Why didn't she look away, like she usually did with strangers? Why did she smile at him as if she'd known him her whole life? He came over to her table less than a minute later. Simply picked up his glass from the bar and walked toward her as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Hi. I'm Andrew. A friend of Mark, Christine's husband. And I'm Emily. I work with Christine at the publishing house." A proofreader? How do you know? She raised her eyebrows in surprise. You have the look of someone who notices every single mistake, he smiled, and the dimples in his cheeks deepened. Professional deformation. I clocked you back at the bar. You frowned 3 times while looking at the menu. I'm guessing there were typos. Emily laughed. He was right, the typos in the menu had jumped out at her, and she had automatically noted each one. Guilty. That's not guilt. That's a talent. Mind if I sit? She nodded, and he settled in across from her. They talked the entire evening, forgetting about everyone else. About books, it turned out he loved reading too, preferring contemporary fiction and historical novels. About movies, both of them couldn't stand stupid comedies and both adored old classic films. About work, he was an engineer at a construction company and talked about his projects with such enthusiasm that Emily listened, completely absorbed. And right now we're designing a bridge, he said, gesturing with his hands. Not in the city, out in the suburbs. A small road bridge. But you know what the hardest part is? Not the calculations, not the materials. The hardest part is convincing the client that you can't cut corners on safety. They always want it cheaper, and then they're shocked when structures start cracking. So how do you convince them? I show them photos of bridges that collapsed because of cost cutting. Usually that works. She laughed again. That laughter surprised her. When was the last time she had laughed so easily, for no reason at all, just from the joy of the moment? When the guests started to leave, Andrew offered to walk her home. They caught a taxi, but got out 2 stops before her place, just to walk. The October wind tangled Emily's hair, fallen leaves rustled underfoot, and she noticed none of it, because she was only looking at him. By the entrance to her building, they stood for another 40 minutes. Andrew didn't try to kiss her, didn't push to come inside, he just talked. Told her about his childhood, about how he dreamed of becoming a pilot but his eyesight ruined that, about choosing between architecture and engineering. I picked engineering because I wanted to build something real, he explained. Architects draw pretty pictures, and we make sure those pictures don't fall apart. A practical approach. Romance in the head, practicality in the hands, he smiled. Can I call you tomorrow? Yes. One short word. But it changed her entire life. Andrew called the next day at exactly 9 a.m. Emily was just getting ready for work, digging through her bag for her transit card, and the call caught her off guard. Hi. It's Andrew. The guy who didn't let you talk to the other guests last night. I remember you, she smiled into the phone. Dinner tonight. I know a place with amazing Italian food. Real pasta, real tiramisu, and a real Italian chef who yells at the waiters in Italian. Sounds tempting. 7 o'clock by the fountain near Washington Square Park. The one with the arch. What? There's an arch there, not just a fountain. He burst out laughing into the phone. See? I told you, professional deformation. You even find mistakes in landmarks. 7? 7. She agreed without even thinking. And every time after that, she agreed just as quickly. The first date, the second, the third. They saw each other almost every day. After work, Andrew would come by the publishing house, and they'd go walking along the avenues, the waterfronts, the old New York streets. Sometimes they stopped at cafes, sometimes they just wandered until dark, talking about everything and nothing. Andrew turned out to be impossibly attentive. He remembered everything she said, even little things mentioned in passing. On their third date, he brought her a bouquet of white peonies. How do you know these are my favorite? Emily stared at the flowers, not believing her eyes. You talked about your grandmother's garden on the first night. You said white peonies grew there, and that you loved them. She didn't even remember saying that. It had been a casual remark in a stream of other memories, and he remembered it. Do you take notes during our conversations? No. I just listen. Really listen. On their fourth date, he learned that she didn't eat breakfast, never enough time. And he started sending her silly pictures with captions like, breakfast is important. Your body is protesting. Dumb, childish, but she liked it. On the fifth, he found out she always got cold in movie theaters, the AC was always too strong, and next time he brought her a blanket. Small, soft, one that fit easily into her bag. "Now you're ready for any movie screening," he announced solemnly. Emily felt like she was living in a fairy tale. No one had ever given her that much attention. Her exes forgot her birthdays, mixed up her preferences, could disappear for weeks and then be surprised she was upset. Andrew was different. Andrew seemed to read her mind, to anticipate her wishes before she even voiced them. Sometimes it scared her. Too good. Too perfect. That didn't happen. There had to be a catch somewhere. "Why are you so thoughtful?" he asked one evening when they were sitting in a small cafe in Greenwich Village. "I'm thinking that you're too perfect." "That's suspicious." Andrew laughed. "I'm not perfect. I scatter my socks all over the apartment, forget to take out the trash, and I absolutely hate doing the dishes. And I snore when I sleep on my back. Serious flaws. See? A terrible person. But I bring you flowers because you deserve them." He took her hand and pressed it to his lips. A light kiss on the back of her hand, old-fashioned, almost storybook-like. But a wave of warmth ran through Emily's body. That evening, they kissed for real for the first time. And everything around them, the noise of the cafe, the people outside the window, the waiter with the menu, ceased to exist. There were only the two of them, and that feeling that made her head spin. A month after they met, Andrew said he loved her for the first time. It happened in his car. They had just come back from the theater. They'd seen The Seagull at one of the downtown theaters, and Andrew parked near her building but didn't hurry to say goodbye. Outside, the first snow was falling, big flakes slowly swirling in the glow of the streetlights. "There's something I want to tell you," he said without looking at her. "And I know it's probably too soon. We've only been together for a month. But I can't keep it to myself, because it's eating me up inside." Emily felt her heart start to race. "I love you, Emily. Probably from the very minute I saw you in that cafe. No, exactly from that minute. You were sitting there alone in that blue dress of yours, looking at people with this. I don't even know how to describe it. With this quiet sadness. And I wanted to do everything I could so you'd never feel that sad again." She was silent. Not because she didn't know what to say, the words were just stuck in her throat. "You don't have to say it back," he added quickly. "I get that this is a lot. I just wanted you to know." Emily took his hand and squeezed it tightly. "I do too." "You do what?" "Love you." "I love you too." He turned to her, and there was so much happiness in his eyes that her nose started to sting. They hugged right there in the car, awkwardly leaning over the gearshift. And Emily thought only one thing: this was it. This was what she'd been waiting for her whole life. Emily met Andrew's mother 2 months into their relationship. He had put that moment off for a long time, and Emily couldn't understand why. She herself had already told her parents about Andrew over the phone, in detail, and her mom was thrilled. Come for Christmas, she invited them. We'll get to know each other properly around the holiday table. Andrew, on the other hand, spoke little and reluctantly about his family. Emily only knew the basics. His father had died of a heart attack when Andrew was 15. His mother, Nancy, raised 2 children on her own. Besides Andrew, there was also an older sister, Irene, but she lived separately, somewhere on the outskirts of the city. My mom is not an easy person, he admitted once, when Emily asked about his family again. She went through a lot after my dad died. Worked 2 jobs to feed me and Irene. Sacrificed everything, gave up everything. It kind of broke her, I guess. She became very distrustful of people. Especially strangers. Am I a stranger? For now, yes. To her, anyone new is a stranger. She needs time to get used to people. How much time? He shrugged. She never got used to my exes. But you're different. You're special. She'll see that. The wording "never got used to" made Emily uneasy. What did that mean? Had he broken up with his girlfriends because of his mother? She wanted to ask, but something stopped her. Maybe fear of hearing the answer. The meeting was set for Saturday. Nancy lived in an old building not far from Queens. The neighborhood wasn't great, the building was run down, no elevator, they had to walk up to the 4th floor. Andrew was tense the entire way. He joked, like always, but Emily could feel how nervous he was. It rubbed off on her. By the time they reached the right door, her palms were sweaty. "Ready?" he asked. "I guess. If she says something weird, don't take it personally. She has a difficult personality, but her heart is good." He rang the doorbell. The door didn't open right away. There was annoyed muttering behind it and the sound of shuffling steps. Then the lock clicked, and a woman around 60 appeared in the doorway. The first thing Emily noticed was her eyes. The same gray as Andrew's, but completely different. Cold. Sharp. Evaluating. Those eyes scanned Emily from head to toe in an instant, and she felt as if she'd just been x-rayed. "Mom, this is Emily," Andrew introduced her. "I told you about her." "I remember," Nancy replied shortly. She didn't smile, didn't offer her hand, didn't make a single gesture that could be taken as welcoming. She just stepped aside, letting them into the narrow, dark hallway. The apartment was small and cluttered. Boxes and bags were everywhere, old photographs in dusty frames hung on the walls. It smelled stale, either old furniture or medicine. "Go to the kitchen," Nancy said. "Want some tea?" The kitchen was just as cramped as the rest of the apartment. A small table covered with a floral oilcloth, 3 mismatched chairs, cabinets with peeling paint. Emily sat where she was told, feeling out of place. Andrew sat down next to her and put his hand on her knee under the table, as if to support her. The gesture calmed her a little. Nancy busied herself at the stove, clattering cups. She didn't look at Emily once since they'd arrived. All her questions were addressed exclusively to her son. "How's work?" "Got a bonus." "Good, sweetheart." "When are you coming to fix the faucet?" "It's leaking, driving me crazy." "Next Saturday." "And did you pay the utility bills?" "I sent you the statement." "I paid them." Emily sat in silence, shifting her gaze between them. It felt like she was witnessing some kind of ritual whose meaning she didn't understand. Mother and son spoke as if she weren't there. As if she were a piece of furniture, not worth noticing. The tea was weak and tasteless. Nancy put a small dish of cheap cookies on the table and sat across from them, folding her arms over her chest. "So," she said to her son, "tell me. How did you meet?" Andrew kept it brief, without details. "A mutual friend's birthday, a first date." Emily noticed how carefully he avoided anything too personal, as if he were afraid of his mother's judgment. "I see," Nancy drawled when he finished. "And you work as a proofreader, right? At a publishing house?" It was the first question addressed to Emily all evening. "Yes." "At Northern Star," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "And do they pay well?" "Mom." Andrew frowned. "What, Mom?" "It's a normal question. I have a right to know who my son is involved with." "They pay fine," Emily answered, though everything inside her tightened at that "involved with." "Fine is how much?" "Enough to live on?" "It's enough." "Do you have your own place?" "Mom." Stop interrogating her. Andrew's voice turned sharper. "This is not an interrogation. This is reasonable caution. There are so many gold diggers these days, you have to stay alert." Emily felt blood rush to her cheeks. "A gold digger? Her?" "I live in my parents' apartment," she said, forcing herself to stay calm. "They moved out of the city and left it to me." "Left it or gave it to you?" "For now, they left it. The deed hasn't been finalized yet." "Ah." Nancy nodded with the look of someone who'd just received confirmation of her suspicions. "So the apartment isn't yours?" "Technically, it's my parents', yes, but I'm going to the bathroom," Andrew suddenly said and left the kitchen. Emily was left alone with her future mother-in-law and instantly regretted agreeing to this meeting. Nancy leaned back in her chair and looked at her directly for the first time. There was nothing in that look but barely concealed hostility. "So you're that Emily?" "Yes." 2 months together, and already meeting the mother. "You worked fast, didn't you?" "Excuse me?" "My Andrew is a trusting boy. Too trusting. He takes every skirt at face value. I've tried teaching him, no use." Emily stayed silent, not knowing what to say. She hadn't expected such open hostility. I can see right through you, Nancy continued, lowering her voice. You think you're the first? There were others before you. They all wanted the same things, latch onto my son and live off him. It didn't work out for them, and it won't work out for you. Nancy, you don't know me at all. And I don't want to. My advice to you, find another fool. Andrew is not for you. Footsteps in the hallway made her stop. Andrew came back, and Nancy instantly changed her expression, becoming merely restrained again, without obvious aggression. On the way home, Emily was silent. Andrew glanced at her with concern several times. What happened? Did Mom say something? No, everything's fine. She didn't tell him. She decided it was just a first meeting, that Nancy didn't know her yet and was being cautious. Any mother would protect her son. Surely, with time, everything would change once her mother-in-law got to know her better. Emily couldn't even imagine how wrong she was. Despite the failed introduction to his mother, the following months were happy. Andrew made up for his mother's coldness with love and care. He still brought flowers, remembered little things, made surprises. They started living together. Andrew moved in with Emily, since his rented studio was too small and too far from her work. Temporarily, he said. Until we save up for our own place. Emily agreed. What difference did it make where they lived, as long as they were together? They visited Nancy about once every 2 weeks. Every visit was hard on Emily. Her mother-in-law still looked at her with barely hidden contempt. But she put up with it for Andrew's sake. Thanks for not fighting with her, he would say after those visits. I know she's difficult, but she's my mom, and I love her. I understand. She'll change. Just give her time. Emily nodded, even though she believed it less and less each time. But her relationship with Andrew's sister, Irene, turned out unexpectedly well. Irene was 5 years older than her brother, worked as a sales associate at a cosmetics store, and had never been married. At their first meeting, she seemed to Emily like a regular, unremarkable woman, a little overweight, with a tired face and a habit of constantly complaining about life. But unlike their mother, she was friendly enough. Oh, Emily, that top looks so good on you. Where'd you get it? At Macy's, on sale. No way, you're so smart. I'm scared to even walk into Macy's, everything's so expensive. Conversations with Irene were shallow, but pleasant. Emily started thinking that maybe Andrew's family wasn't all that bad. At least she could communicate normally with his sister. Back then, she had no idea what role Irene would end up playing in her life. And that it would be nothing like what she imagined. In March, 6 months after they met, Andrew proposed. It happened in that same cafe, Chestnut, where they'd first met. Andrew had arranged everything with the owner ahead of time, decorating their table with candles and white peonies. When the waiter brought dessert, a chocolate cake topped with fresh strawberries, there was a small velvet box sitting right in the center. Emily stared at it, not believing her eyes. Is that what I think it is? Andrew stood up from the table, dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the cafe, in front of everyone, and opened the box. On the black velvet, a ring sparkled with a small but perfectly cut diamond. Emily, his voice shook. I know we've only been together 6 months. Maybe it's too fast. Maybe I should have waited. But I can't wait, because I know for sure you're the woman I want to spend my whole life with. The one I want to wake up with every morning and fall asleep with every night. The one I want to grow old with. Will you marry me? It went quiet around them. People at nearby tables froze, watching. The waiter stood still with a tray in his hands. Even the music seemed to get softer. Emily looked at this man's handsome, loving, down on one knee and felt tears running down her cheeks. Not from sadness. From happiness that didn't fit inside her chest. Yes. One word. Short. Simple, but it held everything, all her love, all her dreams, all her hope for the future. The cafe erupted in applause. Andrew slid the ring onto her finger, sprang to his feet, and hugged her so tightly she could barely breathe. Then he kissed her long and tender, not paying attention to some guy at the next table whistling at them. That night they walked through the city for a long time, holding hands and making plans. A wedding in the summer, a honeymoon by the ocean, then start saving for their own place, and in 2 or 3 years, kids. Definitely 2, a boy and a girl. Or 2 boys. Or 2 girls. It didn't matter, as long as they were together. I'm the happiest person in the world, Andrew said when they stopped on a bridge, looking at the city lights. And I'm the happiest. They kissed under the stars like in some silly romantic movie, and Emily thought her life finally had meaning. She didn't know it was the peak and that from there, it would only go downhill. They set the wedding for June, 3 months after the engagement. They decided not to drag it out, especially since neither of them wanted a big, flashy celebration. A modest ceremony, just family and their closest friends. Emily's parents came in from their little town upstate a week before the wedding. Victor, still pale after his illness but stronger now, shook Andrew's hand firmly. "Take care of her," he said seriously. "My daughter is my only treasure." "I will. I promise." Tatiana cried as she hugged her future son-in-law. She liked him right away, polite, attentive, with a good job. "A solid guy," she declared. With Andrew's family, it was more complicated. Nancy took the news of the wedding without enthusiasm. That was fast, she told her son when he came to announce the engagement. "What's the hurry? We love each other, Mom. Why wait? Love doesn't last. Today you love, tomorrow you don't. You should take a closer look." "I already took a closer look." "Well, you know. You're a grown boy." "Boy." Emily flinched inside at the way Nancy called a 30-year-old man that. But she kept her feelings to herself. The wedding took place in a small restaurant near Washington Square Park, right where Andrew had set up their first date. There were about 40 guests: Emily's parents, a few of her friends and coworkers, Andrew's friends, his sister Irene, and, of course, Nancy. The day was sunny and warm, almost perfect. Emily glowed in a simple white dress, and Andrew couldn't take his eyes off her. They laughed, danced, accepted congratulations. Everything was exactly the way she dreamed it would be. Almost everything. The one thing that cast a shadow over the celebration was a short conversation with her mother-in-law. It happened closer to the end of the evening. Emily stepped out into the lobby to fix her makeup and ran into Nancy, who was smoking by the window. "Well, daughter-in-law," Nancy drawled, blowing out a stream of smoke. "Or are you already a wife?" "Already a wife," Emily smiled, trying to be friendly. "Uh-huh. Don't rush into having kids, you hear? Live for yourselves. Diapers are the end of all romance. We're not planning that yet." "Good. And one more thing." Nancy stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Andrew is my son. My only son. No matter what happens between you, he'll still be mine. I raised him alone, gave up everything for him. I won't let some." She paused, searching for the word. "Girl come between us. Is that clear?" Emily stood there, stunned. "I asked you, is that clear? I'm not going to dash great. So you understand." Nancy stubbed out her cigarette and went back into the hall, leaving Emily standing there with her heart pounding. She didn't tell Andrew about it. It was his wedding, their wedding. Why ruin the day? Nancy was probably just nervous. Probably it was hard for her to let her son go. Any mother would feel that way. Emily repeated that to herself for the rest of the evening. And she almost believed it. The first 2 years of married life weren't bad. Not perfect, nothing ever is, but happy enough. They still lived in her parents' apartment in Brooklyn. At first Andrew was against it. It felt awkward, living in someone else's place, but there was no alternative. His engineer salary covered day-to-day expenses, but not a rental in New York, let alone buying their own. "It's okay," Emily would reassure him. "We'll save up and buy our own. And for now, this is our territory. It's our territory. Shared." They both worked, she at the publishing house, he at the construction company. On weekends they got out of the city, walked through parks outside town, picked mushrooms in the fall, and went skiing in the winter. Evenings they spent together cooking dinner, watching movies, talking. Andrew was still attentive and caring. Not like in the first months, the romantic gestures were less frequent, the surprises more modest, but that was normal. You couldn't live at the peak of being in love forever. A marriage needed stability, not fireworks. Her relationship with her mother-in-law stayed tense but manageable. Emily learned to avoid sharp corners, not argue, not react to jabs. They still visited Nancy every 2 weeks, and every time Emily came home with a headache, but she endured it. For Andrew, Irene would sometimes call just to chat, asking about work, about life. Though those conversations usually turned into complaints about her own fate, her pay was low, her love life was non-existent, their mother was always nagging her. "You've got it good," she'd tell Emily. "You have Andrew. He's so caring, so practical. You got lucky." Emily agreed. She really had gotten lucky. At least, that's what she thought. And then she got pregnant. It happened at the beginning of their 3rd year of marriage, in September. Emily stayed late at work, then stopped by a pharmacy and bought a test, just in case. She wasn't really expecting anything, and she took it at home while Andrew still hadn't gotten back. 2 lines. She stared at them for several minutes, not believing her eyes. Then she took another test. And another. 3 tests 3 times, 2 lines. Emily sat on the edge of the bathtub, holding the plastic stick in her hands, and felt tears streaming down her cheeks. She and Andrew hadn't planned on a baby right now, they wanted to save for housing first, but this was still such happiness. A baby. Their baby. A tiny person they had made together. She decided to tell Andrew over dinner. She set the table, lit candles, cooked his favorite steak. When he came home from work, she greeted him with a smile. "What's the occasion?" He looked around at the set table, surprised. "Sit down. I have something to tell you." Andrew sat down obediently. Emily settled across from him and took his hands in hers. "I'm pregnant." A pause. 1 second, 2, 3. Emily watched his expression change from surprise to what? She expected joy. Or at least excitement. But what she saw looked more like confusion. Or even fear. "Pregnant," he repeated slowly. "Are you sure?" 3 tests. All positive. "Wow. Are you happy?" Another pause, way too long for such a simple question. "Of course I'm happy," he said at last, but his voice sounded strange. It's great. A baby. You don't look happy." "I'm just surprised. We weren't planning it yet." "I know. But it's not a disaster, right? We'll handle it?" "Of course we'll handle it." He stood up, walked around the table, and hugged her. But the hug felt mechanical, without his usual warmth. "I just need time to process," he said into her hair. "That's a big piece of news." "I get it." That evening they barely talked. Andrew was quiet, answering in short phrases. A few times he went out to the balcony to smoke, even though he'd quit a year ago. Emily chalked it up to shock. Men took news like that differently. They needed time to get used to the idea of being a father. That was normal. He would come around. But the strange thing was time passed, and Andrew didn't get more excited. Emily's pregnancy progressed, her belly grew rounder, and her husband seemed to pull away more and more. He avoided talking about the baby. He steered clear of baby stores. When Emily pointed out strollers on the street or melted over someone else's baby, he either stayed silent or changed the subject. "Are you sure you're happy?" she asked again and again. "Of course I'm happy. I'm just worried." "About what?" "About everything. Money, housing. A baby is a big responsibility." "We'll manage." "I hope so." That "I hope so" made her wince. Not "of course we will," not "we definitely will," but "I hope so." Like he didn't believe it himself. And like he could feel things were about to get even worse. Nancy found out about the pregnancy from Andrew. He told her on the phone a few days after he found out himself. Emily didn't hear the conversation, but when Andrew came back into the room, his face was dark as a storm cloud. "What did she say?" Emily asked. "Nothing special." "Did she congratulate you?" "She did." "Seriously?" "Yes. She said, 'Good for you, I've been waiting for grandkids. That didn't fit with what Emily knew about Nancy. The same woman who told her at the wedding not to rush into having kids, and now suddenly, I've been waiting for grandkids? The truth came out a week later, when they went to visit her mother-in-law. Nancy met them with a stone face. She didn't offer tea, didn't invite them to sit, she just stared at her daughter-in-law's belly, already noticeable under her loose blouse, and twisted her mouth like she'd seen something unpleasant. "Well, let's see," she said instead of hello. "How many months are you?" 4. "Too early. Anything can happen." "Mom." Andrew snapped. "What, Mom?" "I'm telling the truth. Why do you need a baby now? You don't have a pot to pee in, you are living in someone else's apartment, you can't even save money for anything. Did you even think about how you're going to support it? We'll figure it out somehow." Somehow. Nancy threw up her hands. If your late grandmother could hear you. She raised 3 kids and we never once heard the word somehow from her. Everything planned, everything done smart. And you too somehow? Emily stayed silent, feeling resentment boil inside her. Her baby's hers and Andrew's baby wasn't even born yet, and it was already being treated like a burden. "Nancy," she started as calmly as she could. "We're adults. We decide when we have children." Her mother-in-law slowly turned toward her. Her eyes narrowed. "And nobody asked you. This is family business between me and my son. I'm his family too. I'm his wife." "Wife?" Nancy smirked. "Wives come and go. A mother is for life. Remember that, girl." Andrew stood between them, looking from one to the other, and stayed silent. Silent. He didn't protect his wife, didn't stop his mother, he just stood there like a statue, staring at the floor. They left earlier than usual that day. In the car, Emily couldn't hold it in anymore. "Why didn't you say anything to her?" "Say what?" "Any of it. She said I'm not family. She said wives come and go. And you just stayed quiet." "Emily, she's just worried. Don't take it so personally." "How am I not supposed to take it personally?" "She said, straight to my face, that I'm nobody. In front of you." "That's not what she meant." "Then what did she mean?" Andrew didn't answer. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel and stared at the road. From that day on, something cracked. Not shattered, not yet, but it split deep. Emily understood for the first time, truly, that in any conflict between her and his mother, her husband would not take her side. He would choose silence. He would choose not to see, not to hear, not to notice. And that was scarier than any insult. By the middle of the pregnancy, another problem showed up. One evening, her mother called. "Sweetheart," her voice sounded guilty. "We need to talk. Remember how we wanted to sign the apartment over to you?" "I remember." "Why?" "You see, your dad's heart is acting up again. The doctors say he needs surgery. Urgently. And the money. We don't have the money. We talked it over and decided." She hesitated. "Decided to sell the apartment." Emily's breath caught. "Sell it?" "Not right away, not right away. You'll have at least another 6 months, until we find a buyer, until the paperwork goes through. But after that you'll have to find somewhere else to live. I'm sorry, sweetheart. We didn't want it this way, but there's no other choice. Your dad needs the surgery, otherwise." She didn't finish, but Emily understood. "Of course, Mom. Of course, sell it. Dad's health matters more. Thank you for understanding. We'll help you with the move however we can." Emily hung up and sat in the kitchen for a long time, staring at one spot. Pregnant. Soon on maternity leave, without a paycheck. And in 6 months, without a roof over her head. Andrew's reaction to the news was strange. He didn't get upset, didn't get angry, he looked more thoughtful than anything. "So there won't be an apartment," he said slowly. "Interesting." "What's interesting?" "Nothing. Just thinking what we'll do. We'll look for a rental. Or. Emily hesitated. She knew what he was about to say, and she knew what the reaction would be. Or we'll stay with your mom for a while. She has 2 rooms. With mom? Andrew raised his eyebrows. Are you serious? Why not? You said yourself she has an empty room. I did, but... He shook his head. No. You and mom shouldn't live under the same roof. You can't stand each other. That was strange. Emily expected him to jump on the idea it would mean saving money and being close to his mother. But he refused. He refused on his own. Then what? She asked. We'll look for something in the suburbs. It's cheaper out there. So they did. They found a small 1-bedroom in a suburb in New Jersey, an old building, a shabby entrance, but cheap and close to the train. They moved a month before Emily's parents sold the Brooklyn apartment. When Nancy found out about their decision, she was furious. New Jersey, she screamed into the phone so loudly Emily could hear every word from the next room. That's a dump. The middle of nowhere. And you won't even set foot with me. You picked strangers over your own mother, shoved her aside. Mom, it's temporary. Temporary. Everything with you is temporary. And I'm not getting any younger, by the way. I need help, attention. Or do you think your little wife matters more than your mother? Andrew said something back, made excuses, but Emily wasn't listening anymore. She sat in the room with her hands on her rounded belly and felt the baby move inside. Her baby. Their baby. It's okay, she whispered. We'll manage. The 2 of us will manage. She still believed that was true. Michael was born in February on a cold, snowy evening, with a blizzard whipping outside the maternity hospital windows. The delivery was brutal, 20 hours of labor, then an emergency C-section, a week in the ICU. But the moment Emily first held that tiny, wrinkled little being with eyes the color of the sky, all the pain vanished instantly. Hello, Michael, she whispered. I'm your mom. And you're my miracle. Andrew came to the hospital with a bouquet of roses and a teddy bear. He looked at his son through the glass and smiled. It seemed like it had finally hit him, finally reached him. Beautiful, he said. He looks like me. Like you. The eyes are definitely yours. Michael Andrew Parker. Sounds solid. The first days at home were chaos. Emily barely slept. Michael woke up every 2 hours, demanding food. Andrew helped. He brought the baby to her, rocked him, even changed diapers. Clumsy, but trying. And then, a week after they got discharged, Nancy showed up. No call, no warning. She just rang the doorbell and walked in without waiting for an invitation. Well? Let me see my grandson. Emily, exhausted from sleepless nights and a stretched-out t-shirt with unwashed hair, handed Michael to her. Nancy took him like someone had handed her something unpleasant, arms extended, lips pressed in disgust. He's tiny. How much does he weigh? 7 pounds. Not much. Andrew was 9 pounds at birth. A real big boy. The doctor said his weight is normal. Doctors, her mother-in-law snorted. What do they know? She held her grandson for exactly a minute, then shoved him back at Emily. He cries a lot, I bet. Like all newborns. Meaning a lot. You're eating something wrong. Your milk is bad, that's why he's screaming his head off. Emily bit her tongue. Not the time, not the place, not now. Nancy stayed for 2 hours. In that time, she managed to criticize the apartment a kennel, not a home. The baby can't breathe in here. Look through the fridge, nothing but frozen junk. Where's real food? Inspect the baby clothes, cheap Chinese trash. You couldn't even spend money on something decent and lecture Emily on how to swaddle a newborn properly. Back in my day there were no Pampers, and we turned out just fine, healthy. When she finally left, Emily burst into tears for the first time since her son was born, not from happiness, but from helplessness and hurt. Andrew hugged her and stroked her head. Don't pay attention. You know what she's like. Why didn't you say anything to her? She said my milk is bad. That's not what she meant. That phrase again. That endless, exhausting, that's not what she meant. Like a universal excuse for every nasty thing his mother said. Then what did she mean? Emily asked tiredly. Andrew didn't answer. Like always. Weeks went by. Michael grew, got calmer. Emily slowly got used to the new rhythms: feedings, walks, quick naps grabbed in pieces. She managed. She managed on her own, because Andrew was drifting away. At first she didn't notice, she was too busy with the baby, too exhausted. But little things piled up, and it got harder and harder to ignore them. He stopped asking how she felt. Stopped offering help. Before, he'd volunteered to rock Michael, now she had to ask. He stopped hugging her before bed. Stopped saying I love you. Instead, he started staying late at work. First once a week, then twice, then almost every day. He came home late, tired and irritated. He ate dinner in silence, buried in his phone. When she asked questions, he answered in one-word lines: fine, tired, a lot of work. One night he came back especially late, after midnight. He smelled like expensive cologne, alcohol, and something else. Something sweet and floral, women's perfume. Emily didn't ask. She was afraid of the answer. And then the complaint started. Why is the apartment always a mess? He'd ask, looking at the baby stuff scattered around. I have the baby in my arms all day. When am I supposed to clean? Other people manage somehow. What other people? My mom, for example. She worked, kept a house, and raised me and Irene by herself. His mother again. That unreachable ideal she was constantly being compared to. Andrew, your mom had help. Your grandmother watched you. So what? She still managed everything. I'm managing too. Just not all at once. Yeah, I can tell. Sarcasm. He'd never spoken to her like that before. Andrew, what is going on with you? Nothing. I'm just tired. Tired became the universal answer to everything. Why aren't you helping with the baby? Tired. Why won't you talk to me? Tired. Why do you look at me like I'm a stranger? Tired, tired, tired. Emily felt their marriage tearing at the seams, but she didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to stop this slow destruction. And then something happened that opened her eyes. When Michael was 4 months old, Emily accidentally found a bank statement. She was looking for a charger in the nightstand and found a folded sheet of paper. She unfolded it automatically and froze. Transfers over the last 3 months. Nancy $500, then $700, then $850. Irene $350, then $400, then $500. Emily did the math, almost $3,300 in a quarter. And meanwhile, Andrew gave her $1,000 a month to run the household. For all the food, diapers, medicine, baby formula, utilities. We need to save, he'd say. Money's tight. Why are those diapers so expensive? Get cheaper ones. We can't afford extra. And yet he was sending his mother and sister amounts that could feed a family of 3 for a month. That evening, Emily couldn't hold it in anymore. I found the statement. Andrew tensed up. What statement? The bank statement. The transfers to your mom and Irene. So? Andrew, you keep telling me there's no money and we have to save, and you're sending them $3,000 a quarter. Meanwhile, what you give me for the baby is scraps. That's my paycheck, he snapped. I decide what I spend it on. But we have a child. Your child. He needs decent things, decent food, medicine. He has enough. He has enough? Emily felt rage boil inside her. I count every penny. I buy the cheapest milk, I cut corners on everything, I haven't spent $1 on myself since I gave birth. And your mother, a retiree with a good pension, gets more from you than your family does. She gave me everything. Her whole life. Now it's my turn. And what about us? Your son? Where do we rank? Andrew stood up from the table. His face turned to stone. Don't touch my mother. This isn't up for discussion. Andrew. I said it's not up for discussion. He walked out, slamming the door. A minute later, the sound of keys in the entryway. Where are you going? To Mom's. To get some air. He came back after midnight. Slept on the couch in the living room without saying a word. In the morning, back to acting like nothing happened. From that day on, Emily understood she was at war. And the enemy wasn't just her mother-in-law. The enemy was her own husband, who had chosen his mother's side. Once, she tried talking to Nancy directly. She decided maybe if she explained the situation, Nancy would understand. Maybe there was still something human in her. She called, set up a time, and came over with Michael. Her mother-in-law opened the door with her usual stone face. She didn't even look at her grandson, and she let them in reluctantly. What do you want? To talk. About what situation? Nancy, Emily tried to speak calmly. You're getting large amounts from Andrew. I understand, you're his mother, you've done a lot for him. But we have a small child. We need money too. Maybe we can find some kind of balance? Balance? Her mother-in-law narrowed her eyes. So you came here to beg for money? I'm not begging, then what is it? My son decides how much he gives me. Of his own free will. Or do you think I'm forcing him? That's not what I meant. Oh, I know exactly what you meant. Nancy leaned forward, and her eyes glittered with malice. My son tells me everything. Everything. How you waste money. How you demand the most expensive diapers. How you suck him dry. That's not true. It is true. I had you figured out right away, from the first meeting. A gold digger. You got pregnant on purpose to tie him to you. You thought the baby would be born and he wouldn't be able to go anywhere. Right? Emily choked on outrage. How can you even say that? I can. And I'll tell you one more thing. Her mother-in-law lowered her voice to a hiss. Andrew is my son. Mine. I gave birth to him, I raised him, I gave him everything. And no stray little nobody is going to take him from me. He'll figure out soon what a mistake he made marrying you. And then. She didn't finish, but the meaning couldn't have been clearer. Emily stood up. I should go. Go ahead. Go. And don't come back here again. I don't need you wrecking my nerves. When she stepped out of the apartment, Emily leaned against the stairwell wall and stood there for a long time, trying to stop shaking. Michael slept in his stroller, unaware that his mother had just been declared war on. That evening she told Andrew not everything, just the basics. Your mom called me a gold digger. She said I got pregnant on purpose. Andrew was silent. Do you hear me? She said I got knocked up on purpose to trap you. Mom is emotional. Don't take it so personally. Don't take it personally? She insulted me to my face. She insulted our child. And you're saying, don't take it personally? What do you want me to do? Protect me. Talk to her. Tell her she can't talk like that. And what would that change? She still won't change. Then at least try. Andrew shrugged. Fine. I'll talk to her. He never did. Or he did, but nothing changed. Nancy kept getting transfers, kept calling her son every day, kept taking shots at her daughter-in-law whenever she got the chance. And Emily. Emily accepted it. Almost accepted it. She decided this was just how she'd have to live, caught between a hammer and an anvil, swallowing humiliation to keep the family together. But she was wrong. Because the worst part was still ahead. It started with small things. The kind of small things that pile up day after day until they turn into an avalanche. Andrew started coming home later and later. Sometimes after midnight. Sometimes near morning. The explanations were always the same: work, a meeting, a pileup. But more and more often, he smelled like alcohol. And those same perfumes, sweet, floral. He almost stopped talking to Emily. Just one-word answers to everyday questions. Yeah. No. I will. I won't. I'm leaving. I'll be back. He didn't do anything with Michael at all. Didn't hold him, didn't play with him, didn't get up at night. Like the baby wasn't his, like he was some random child who'd ended up in the apartment by accident. The complaints got worse. Now Andrew picked at every little thing. Why are there dishes in the sink, even though it was one cup? Why is the baby crying again, even though Michael was teething and cried no more than any baby? Why is the fridge empty, even though Emily had gone grocery shopping just yesterday with the scraps he gave her? How long are you going to waste money on those little jars, even though she made baby puree herself to save? One evening Michael was already 5 months old. Emily couldn't take it anymore. Andrew, what's happening to you? You've become a completely different person. We loved each other. We were happy. He smirked. Keyword, were. What does that mean? It means what it means. Before, it was different. There was no baby, no constant problems, no constant whining. Whining? I'm not whining, I'm asking you to help. Help with what? You sit at home all day, doing nothing. Doing nothing? I'm with the baby from morning to night. I feed him, do laundry, cook, clean alone. Without your help. Other people manage. Other people again? What other people? My mom managed. And she didn't complain. Your mom. Emily jumped up from the couch. Your mom is all you can say. She got inside your head. Turned you against me. And you fell for it like a little boy. Don't you dare talk about her in that tone. I will. I will talk that way because it's true. She hates me. She wants us divorced. And you're helping her. Andrew stepped toward her. There was something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Cold, calculating anger. You know what? I'm sick of hearing this. Every day it's the same thing. Complaints, hysterics, tears. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is? It's exhausting for you? What about me? I'm carrying everything by myself. The baby, the house, you. And all you do is criticize. Because there's plenty to criticize. Like what? Like money. How much do you spend a month? I work like a dog, and you. And I save on everything. I save on myself. I can't even remember the last time I bought something for me. Mom says back in her day people used rags instead of diapers, and it was fine. Mom says? That mom says again? Emily grabbed her head. Do you hear yourself? You're a 30-year-old man, and you talk like a parrot that mom says, mom thinks, mom believes. Shut up. I won't. Because it's true. You're a mama's boy. A doormat. You can't make a single decision on your own without her approval. He raised his hand. Emily instinctively flinched back, but the hit didn't come. Andrew dropped his arm, breathing hard. I'm going to mom's, he said dully. Cool off here. Think about how you're acting. He left. He didn't come back until morning, angry, sleep-deprived, reeking of stale alcohol. After that fight, something changed for good. They barely spoke. They lived like neighbors in the same apartment, but in different worlds. Andrew left early, came back late, slept on the couch. Emily's alone with the baby, alone with the house, alone with her thoughts. She thought about divorce. More and more often. But where would she go? Her parents had sold the apartment and lived in a small town upstate. She had no money of her own. No job. Just her and a 5-month-old baby. No. Not yet. She had to endure. Michael would get bigger, she'd go back to work, get back on her feet. Then she'd see. She didn't know she wouldn't have to endure much longer. That day started like usual. A gray autumn morning, rain outside the window, cold tea in the kitchen. Emily fed Michael, put him down for a nap, sat at the table, and stared out the window. Her head felt empty and echoing. Andrew had left for work earlier than usual, didn't even say goodbye, just slammed the door. She was used to it by now. The emptiness, the cold, the slow dying of their marriage. That evening, he came home early. It was strange, usually he stayed out until 10, sometimes until midnight. But today, 7. And he was drunk. Not wasted, but it showed. His eyes were shiny, his movements a little slowed, and he reeked of expensive cognac. Anything to eat? Instead of hello. There's soup in the fridge. Want me to heat it up? I'll do it myself. He went to the kitchen, clanging pots. Emily stayed in the room. She didn't want to catch his eye one more time than necessary. Lately, just seeing her irritated him. But he came to her himself. Stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame. We need to talk. Her heart dropped. That tone didn't mean anything good. About what? About money. About our situation. I'm listening. He paused, like he was gathering his thoughts. Here's the deal, Mom said. He faltered. I thought it's time for you to go back to work. Back to work? Michael is 5 months old. So what? People put kids in daycare at 3 months. It's not a big deal. I'm not putting him in daycare at 5 months. He's still too little. Then hire a nanny. With what money? With yours. You'll be working, so you'll pay. Emily stared at him, not believing what she was hearing. Andrew, my proofreader's salary is $1,400. A nanny costs at least $1,000. What's left? $400. That's still something. Are you kidding me? No. I'm telling it like it is. He took a step into the room. Money's tight. Mom. That mom again. Mom needs help. And Irene too. One paycheck isn't enough for everyone. For everyone? And us, we don't count? Your wife and your son? We count. That's why I'm telling you, go get a job. And you can't just give less to your mom and sister? At least temporarily. His face darkened. I already said it's not up for discussion. Why? Why are your mother and sister more important than your family? Because they're my blood. They raised me. They've been there my whole life. And you. He cut himself off. And me what? Nothing. Finish it. If you started, finish it. He took another step. Now they were standing very close, and Emily could see his eyes, cold eyes of a stranger. Mom says you're using me. You climbed onto my back and you're riding it. You sit at home doing nothing, just draining money out of me. That's not true. And I think it is. Look, he swept his hand around the room. Mess everywhere. Dishes not washed. The kids always screaming. And you either you're tired, or your head hurts, or it's something else. Mom at your age worked 2 jobs and still kept the house spotless. Your mom. Again, your mom. Emily felt a wave of rage rising inside her. I'm sick to death of your mom. She's poisoned my life. And she's brainwashed you. Don't you dare talk like that. I will. Because it's true. You're her puppet. She pulls the strings and you dance. Shut up. No. I've been quiet for 2 years. I swallowed it, I took it, I pretended everything was fine. But it's not fine. None of this is fine. Michael started crying in the next room, woken by the raised voices. Emily jerked toward him, but Andrew grabbed her by the arm. Stop. We're not done. Let go. The baby's crying. He can wait. I've got one more thing to tell you. He let go and pulled a sheet of paper out of his pocket. Here. I found you a job. What? A job. Cleaning an office for my friend. 6 to 9 in the morning. You'll be back before I leave. He gave a crooked smirk. Michael can stay with me for a couple hours. He'll survive. Emily stared at the paper, unable to believe it. A cleaner? Yeah. I have a degree. I'm a proofreader. Why would I go clean offices? Because that's all you're good for, Andrew snapped. Stop acting like a princess. We need money. For your mom, for Irene. Even if it's for them. They're my family. And us? Me and Michael, who are we? Andrew twisted his mouth like she'd said something disgusting. You're a burden. A burden that does nothing but suck money out of me. Emily recoiled like she'd been hit. You're serious? Dead serious. Mom was right, I made a mistake marrying you. I should have listened to her from the start. Andrew, stop. He raised his voice. I'm done. Every day it's the same thing, whining, complaints, demands. I work like a dog, and you sit at home doing nothing. I'm raising your son. My son? He smirked. Or maybe he's not. Who knows what you do here while I'm at work? That was too much. Emily felt blood rush to her head. How dare you? I dare. And I'll tell you more. Andrew stepped toward her, looming over her with all his weight. So here's how it's going to be, you hen. Today you're getting out of maternity leave and finding a job. One salary isn't enough for my mom and sister. You got that? Emily opened her mouth to answer, but she didn't get the chance. His hand flew up, and a burning slap crashed against her cheek. The world froze. Time stopped. Emily stood there, her palm pressed to her stinging cheek, staring at the man she had once loved. The man who had sworn he'd protect her. The man who had just hit her. And something inside her clicked. Not broke, clicked. Like a switch. Like a fuse finally blowing. The fear she'd been living with for months, fear of being alone, fear of losing her family, fear she couldn't handle it, evaporated in an instant. In its place came something else. Cold, clear, completely calm rage. Andrew waited for her reaction. For tears, a meltdown, begging for forgiveness. He was used to her. To her swallowing hurt. To her staying quiet. But instead, Emily slowly lowered her hand and looked him straight in the eyes. And what he saw there made him step back. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, she said quietly, almost in a whisper. What? She didn't answer. She turned and walked into the bedroom. Calmly, unhurried, like nothing had happened. Hey! Andrew shouted after her. I'm talking to you. Where are you going? Emily didn't turn around. She opened the closet, pulled out a travel bag, the same one they'd once taken on their honeymoon, and started methodically packing things into it. Hers. Michael's. Andrew appeared in the doorway. What is this? Where do you think you're going? I'm leaving. Where? He laughed out loud. You've got nowhere to go. You have nothing, no money, no place, no job. You'll fall apart without me. Emily zipped the bag and turned to him. You know, Andrew, for 2 years I listened to how useless I am. From you, from your mother. I endured it, stayed quiet, hoped things would change. But now. She touched her burning cheek. Now you showed me who you really are. And you know what? Thank you for that. Thank you. He blinked, thrown off. What are you talking about? Thank you for opening my eyes. I clung to this marriage for so long, to this illusion of a family. But it never existed. There was only your mother pulling your strings, and you her obedient puppet. How dare you dash quiet? She raised her hand, and to his own surprise, he went silent. Now I'm going to talk. I've been quiet for 2 years, enough. She stepped right up to him. He was a head taller, bigger, stronger, but for some reason, right then, in that moment, she seemed bigger than he did. You think I'll be lost without you? You think I have nowhere to go? She gave a tight little smile. You don't know anything about me. In 2 years of marriage you never even bothered to learn who I am. Andrew, do you know who my grandfather was? The one who bought the Brooklyn apartment back in the 70s? Andrew frowned. What does that have to do with everything? My grandfather was a successful developer. My grandmother was a Columbia University professor. My father is a structural engineer who designed half the New York subway. You think my family only had one apartment? Andrew's face shifted. Something flashed in his eyes, not fear yet, but wariness. What are you trying to say? That the Brooklyn apartment wasn't the only one. There's another one. Small, a 1-bedroom, in Manhattan. My grandmother left it to me in her will when I was 18. I never told anyone, not you, not your mother. You know why? He stayed silent. Because I wanted to see what you loved me for, me, or an apartment. And now I have my answer. Andrew went pale. You have an apartment in Manhattan? And you kept quiet? Yes. And that's not all. Emily grabbed the bag. I have savings. Not a lot, but enough to get started. I have an education and a profession. I have friends who'll help. I have a son I'll do anything for. She headed toward the nursery. Andrew grabbed her wrist. Stop. You're not going anywhere. Let go. I said stop. Emily looked at his hand clamped around her wrist. Then into his eyes. Let go. Now. Something in her voice made his fingers loosen. He didn't even understand why, he just couldn't hold on. Emily went into the nursery. Michael wasn't crying anymore, he was lying in his crib, staring up at the ceiling with big gray eyes. His father's eyes. We're leaving, baby, she whispered, lifting her son into her arms. Mom's getting you out of here. Everything's going to be okay. Andrew stood in the doorway, watching her. His face looked confused, almost scared. Emily, wait. Let's talk. We already did. I lost my temper. I shouldn't have. He cut himself off, unable to say the word hit. I'm sorry. Let's talk this through. There's nothing to talk through. But where will you go? With the baby, this late? That's not your problem anymore. She walked past him into the entryway, holding Michael with one arm and the bag with the other. She put on her jacket and wrapped her son in a warm blanket. Andrew followed her like he was lost. Emily, wait. I didn't mean to. It's all. I drank, I was tired, Mom was pressuring me. Please. She opened the door and turned back. You know what's the funniest part? I would have forgiven you for everything. The complaints, the coldness, even your mother. I loved you, Andrew. I really loved you. But this. She touched her cheek again. This, I can't forgive. And I won't. Emily. You'll get the divorce papers soon. And one more thing. She looked him straight in the eyes. You said Michael might be. Not yours. Remember those words. They're going to come back to bite you. She stepped out onto the landing. Emily, wait. But she was already going down the stairs, clutching her son to her chest, not looking back, not stopping. The door slammed behind her. The night air hit her face cold, damp, smelling like fall and exhaust. Emily stood by the entrance, holding Michael close, and only then let herself start shaking. She'd done it. She really had. She left. Michael squirmed in her arms and whimpered. Shoo, baby, shoo, she whispered. We're going somewhere warm now. Just hang on a little. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Hello, Christine? It's Emily. I'm sorry it's so late. Yeah, it happened. Can I come to you? With Michael. Thank you. Thank you so much. Half an hour later, she was sitting in her former coworker and friend's kitchen, drinking hot tea and telling her everything. For the first time, everything, from start to finish. About her mother-in-law, about the money, about the constant complaints. About tonight. Christine listened in silence, only shaking her head. I always knew something was off about him, she said when Emily finished. Remember the wedding? Even then I noticed how his mother looked at you. I wanted to warn you, but I didn't have the nerve. I wouldn't have listened anyway, Emily sighed. I was so in love. So blind. You weren't blind. You just wanted to believe in the best. We all do. Michael slept in the next room. Christine had put him down in an old crib left over from her nephew. Emily listened to his steady breathing through the cracked door and felt the tension slowly start to release. What are you going to do? Christine asked. Tomorrow I'm going to Manhattan. I have an apartment there to my grandmother's. I never told anyone about it, not even Andrew. Seriously? In Manhattan? Yeah. Tiny, but it's mine. The paperwork is clean. It's been in my name since I was 18. Christine let out a low whistle. Wow. Look at you. And here I thought you were totally trapped. I thought so too. Or rather, I forced myself to think so. You know, it's weird. When you live with someone who keeps telling you you're worthless, that you'll fall apart without him, you start believing it. Even if you know it isn't true. Gaslighting, Christine nodded. I've read about that. Psychological abuse. Probably. I just never thought it could happen to me. To me, educated, smart, independent. And yet it did. The main thing is, you got out. Yeah, Emily gave a weak smile. I got out thanks to a slap. Funny, right? He thought he'd break me, and instead he woke me up. The next days were insane. In the morning, Emily went to Manhattan. The apartment, a tiny studio on the top floor of an old building, greeted her with the smell of dust and memories. She hadn't been here since her grandmother's funeral 5 years ago. Everything was still there, the old furniture, the yellowed photos on the walls, her grandmother's books in the cabinet. Emily walked around the room, touching familiar things, and suddenly started crying. Grandma, she whispered. If you only knew how you saved me. She spent the whole day cleaning. Washed the windows, ran the curtains through the laundry, threw out old junk. By evening, the studio had transformed, small, but cozy, bright, hers. The next day, Emily picked Michael up from Christine's and brought him to their new home. Here we are, baby. We're home, she said as she laid her son in her grandmother's old crib. Now everything will be different. I promise. A day later, she went to urgent care to document the injuries. Her cheek didn't hurt anymore, but the bruise was clearly visible. The doctor examined her, shook his head, and wrote up a report. Are you going to file a police report? Not yet. But I'll need the documentation. Documentation for court. Emily already knew what she was going to do next. Her phone kept blowing up with calls. Andrew called every half hour. She didn't pick up. Then the messages started. Emily, let's talk. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Where did you go? I'm worried. She didn't reply. On the third day, Nancy called. Hello? Emily? Yes? This is Nancy. Andrew told me everything. He says you left and took the baby. Is that true? It's true. And where did you go? To your parents? That's none of your business. A pause. Then a cold little laugh. What an idiot. You think anyone wants a woman with a kid? You'll struggle, and you'll crawl back. Then we'll talk. I won't crawl back, Emily said calmly. Never. And by the way, Nancy, since we're talking, tell Andrew he'll be getting the divorce papers soon. And one more thing, I recorded our last conversation. The whole thing. On my phone. Silence. You what? Recorded it? I did. All of it. The part about Hen, the money for Mom and Irene, the part where he said Michael might not be his. Very useful material for court. Nancy sucked in a furious breath. How dare you have a nice day, Nancy. Say hi to Irene. Emily hung up and blocked the number. Her hands were shaking, but for the first time in a long time, there was a smile on her face. A week later, Emily filed for divorce. Andrew tried to reach her, called from unknown numbers, messaged her on social media, and once even cornered her outside the Manhattan building. How he found the address was unclear. Maybe he'd been watching her. Emily, please, he said, stepping in front of her. Let's talk. I'll change. I promise. Move. I'm serious. I was wrong, I get it. Mom was pressuring me too much, I snapped. It won't happen again. Andrew, she looked at him calmly, without anger, without hurt. You hit me. You hit the mother of your child. You called me a hen. You said your son might not be yours. What exactly do you want to discuss? He lowered his head. I was drunk. You were sober when you spent years listening to your mother and not protecting me. You were sober when you sent her money while your son wore cheap diapers. You were sober when you told me every day how useless I was. The slap was just the cherry on top. Emily, if you show up here again, I'll call the police. I have documentation from urgent care and the recording of our conversation. You don't need that. He looked at her confused, pathetic, and she suddenly realized she felt nothing for him. No love, no hate. Just emptiness. Go, Andrew. And don't come back. He walked away with his head down, like a kicked dog. Emily went upstairs, locked the door with every lock, and leaned against it with her back. Her heart was pounding, her hands were shaking. But she'd done it. On her own. And that was only the beginning. Weeks of waiting followed. Divorce isn't quick, especially with a minor child. Emily hired a lawyer, Helen, a strict woman in her 50s, whom Christine recommended. At the first meeting, the lawyer listened to her story, looked over the urgent care report, listened to the recording, and nodded. It's a strong case. We'll pursue not only the divorce, but damages for emotional distress. Plus child support. I don't want his money. It's not his money, it's your son's. He has a legal right to it. And believe me, after what this man did, he needs to pay. Emily thought it over and agreed. Meanwhile, life slowly started to stabilize. She went back to work not as a proofreader like before, but remotely, part-time. The editor-in-chief at Northern Star worked with her once he heard what was going on. Work from home as much as you need, he said. When the baby's older, you'll come back to the office. We're waiting for you. Emily enrolled Michael in daycare, a private one, not far from home. Expensive, but there was no other choice. At first, the little boy cried and didn't want to stay with unfamiliar women, but gradually he got used to it. Kids adapt faster than adults. Money was tight, but it was enough. Emily learned how to budget for real, not the way she did with Andrew, when she was forced to pinch pennies, but consciously, understanding exactly where every dollar went. And strangely enough, she was happy. For the first time in a long time, genuinely happy. There was no more constant tension, no waiting for criticism, no fear of doing something wrong. No mother-in-law with her poisonous remarks. No husband who looked at her like she was nothing. There was just her, her son, and their little apartment in Manhattan. And that was more than enough. 3 months passed. Winter turned into spring, spring into early summer. Michael grew, got stronger, learned to say his first words. Mama most often. Dad not once. Emily stood by her apartment window and watched the leaves unfold on the old trees outside. Today was a special day, a day she'd been waiting for 3 months. Court day. The courthouse greeted her with the hollow quiet of its corridors. Emily walked through the metal detector, showed her ID to the guard, and headed to the right courtroom. Christine was already waiting by the door. Nervous? A little. Don't be. It'll be fine. Your lawyer is a beast. Helen really did look ready for battle. A severe suit, hair pulled back, a folder of documents tucked under her arm. Ready? She asked Emily. Ready. The courtroom doors opened. She walked in and saw him immediately. Andrew sat at the defendant's table, pale, gaunt. Next to him was a lawyer in an expensive suit. Behind them, Nancy in a black dress, like she was at a funeral. Their eyes met. Emily expected to feel something, anger, hurt, at least an echo of what she used to love. But she felt nothing. Just a stranger. Just an ex-husband. She sat at the plaintiff's table. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Helen was incredible. Methodically, step by step, she laid out the story of their marriage. Financial abuse, account statements showing transfers to his mother and sister. Psychological abuse, testimony from Christine and other witnesses. Physical abuse, the urgent care report with photos. And then the recording. Your Honor, we request to enter into evidence an audio recording of the conversation between the plaintiff and the defendant dated October 15th of last year. Andrew's attorney jumped up. Objection. The recording was made without my client's consent. It was recorded in the plaintiff's residence during a conversation she participated in. Under the law, that is admissible. The judge, an older woman with tired eyes, nodded. Objection overruled. Play the recording. And the room filled with Andrew's voice, drunk, angry, dripping with contempt. So here's how it's going to be, you hen. Today you're getting out of maternity leave and finding a job. One salary isn't enough for my mom and sister. Emily watched her ex-husband. He sat pressed into his chair, and his face grew paler with every word. Mom says you're using me. You climbed onto my back and you're riding it. Or maybe he's not even mine. Who knows what you do here while I'm at work? The recording ended. Silence hung over the room. The judge looked at Andrew over her glasses. Defendant, do you acknowledge the authenticity of the recording? His lawyer whispered something in his ear. Andrew nodded. Yes, I do. And did you in fact strike the plaintiff? A pause. Yes. And you called her? The judge glanced at the paperwork. A hen? Yes. And you questioned the child's paternity? I was drunk. That's not what I meant. Nevertheless, you said it? Yes. The judge took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. The court will recess for deliberation. The deliberation lasted 40 minutes. The 40 longest minutes of Emily's life. She sat on a bench in the hallway, staring out the window. Christine sat beside her, holding her hand. It'll be fine, she kept repeating. Did you hear the judge? She's on your side. I know. I just want it to be over. The courtroom door opened. Parties, please come in. Emily walked in and sat down. Her heart was pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. The judge read the decision in a flat, monotone voice. The court orders the dissolution of the marriage between Andrew Parker and Emily Parker. The residence of the minor child, Michael Parker, is to be with the mother. The defendant is ordered to pay the plaintiff compensation for emotional distress in the amount of. The amount was substantial. And the defendant is further ordered to pay child support for the maintenance of the minor son in the amount of 25% of all sources of income until the child reaches the age of majority. The plaintiff's claims are granted in full. This decision may be appealed within 30 days. In full. Everything they asked for. All of it. Emily turned to Helen. Helen was smiling, restrained and professional, but clearly satisfied. Congratulations. I told you we'd win. On the courthouse steps, a surprise was waiting for her. Nancy, her former mother-in-law, stood there clutching a worn bag. She'd aged over these 3 months thinner, with deep shadows under her eyes. Emily, we need to talk. Emily shook her head. We have nothing to talk about. Please. 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Christine touched her elbow. No. Let's go. But something in Nancy's voice made Emily stop. Not malice. Not contempt. Something else, fractured, almost pathetic. Fine. 5 minutes. They stepped aside to a bench under blooming lilacs. I'm listening, Emily said. Nancy was quiet for a long time, staring at the ground. Then she spoke softly, in a dull, even voice, like she was reciting something memorized. I wanted to apologize. Emily didn't answer. She waited. For everything. For how I treated you. For what I said. For. She faltered. For turning Andrew against you. Why? Why what? Why did you do it? From the very beginnings, from the first time we met, you hated me. Why? Nancy lifted her eyes. There was no anger in them, only exhaustion. Because I was afraid of losing him. Andrew was everything I had. He was. After my husband died, he became my purpose. I devoted my whole life to him. I sacrificed everything, gave up everything. And then you showed up young, beautiful, educated. He fell in love. And I realized I was losing him. So you decided to get rid of me. Yes. Nancy nodded. I thought if I split you up, he'd come back to me. He'd be like before, obedient, loyal. My boy. He was obedient. He did everything you told him. But he loved you. Not me, you. I saw that, and I couldn't accept it. Emily looked at this woman pathetic, broken, and felt pity. Strangely enough, pity. What now? She asked. Now? Nancy gave a bitter little smile. Now everything's falling apart. After court, Andrew said it was all my fault. That because of me, he lost his family. He yelled at me. He's never yelled at me before. Emily stayed silent. One more thing. Her former mother-in-law pulled an envelope out of her bag. Take this. For Michael. What is it? Money. The money Andrew transferred to me. I put it aside, barely spent any of it. There's $5,000 here. Take it, let it be for the child. I won't take it. They went their separate ways. Emily walked toward the subway, thinking about how strange life is. 3 months ago, she was a wife her husband didn't respect, a daughter-in-law her mother-in-law hated. Today, she was a free woman with her own apartment and her son. And ahead of her, a whole life. Another year passed. Emily stood by the window, watching October leaves swirl outside. Exactly a year ago, down to the day, she had been sitting in a kitchen in New Jersey, stirring cold tea, not knowing that evening would change her entire life. Michael, now a sturdy 1.5-year-old, was playing on the rug, carefully stacking a tower of colorful blocks. A lot had changed over the year. Emily got promoted, she was now an editor, not a proofreader. Her salary had almost doubled. Michael started going to a good daycare. Life had settled. Andrew paid child support on time after the court ruling. He had no choice. The money went into an account opened in Michael's name. By the time he turned 18, it would be a solid sum. Andrew himself stayed in Boston. Irene sometimes shared updates. Things with Svetlana didn't work out. They broke up after 6 months. Now he lived alone, worked for some construction company. He rarely visited his mother. Nancy was left alone in her apartment in Queens. Emily never saw her again and didn't want to. The phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Hello, Emily? This is James. James Mitchell. Do you remember me? She frowned, trying to place the name. James. James from Columbia's English department? That's the one. We studied together, then lost touch. I found your number through mutual friends. Hope you don't mind? No, not at all. Just surprised. How many years has it been? 8 or 9. They talked for 2 hours about the past, the present. James had divorced too, was raising a 6-year-old son, worked in publishing. Maybe we should meet sometime, he suggested. Get coffee? Maybe, Emily replied and caught herself smiling. Call me during the week. I will. She hung up and looked out the window. The lights of nighttime New York shimmered beyond the glass. Her story was just beginning. 4 more years passed. Emily sat on the porch of a country house, watching Michael, now a 6-year-old kindergartner, play soccer in the yard with Tommy. Nearby, in the sandbox, Molly was busy, James's and Emily's 2-year-old daughter, red-haired like her mom. James came out of the house carrying a tray of lemonade, cookies, fruit. Snack time for the champions. Boys, break. Tommy and Michael ran over, out of breath and happy. Molly immediately toddled toward her older brothers. Emily looked at her family's loud, joyful, real, and smiled. 5 years ago, she'd been a woman without money, without a job, without a future. Today, she was the editor-in-chief of a contemporary fiction department, the owner of 2 apartments, one in Manhattan and this country house, bought together with James. The wife of a loving husband. The mother of 2 children. James sat down beside her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. What are you thinking about? About the past. About how things could have turned out differently. Do you regret it? No. She shook her head. Not a single thing. Everything that happened led me here. To you. To the kids. To this house. To happiness. She looked at him, at this kind, reliable man who had returned to her life 4 years earlier with a random phone call and stayed forever. To happiness. Nancy died last year. Alone, in her apartment. Andrew came to the funeral from Boston, older, heavier. Irene said he changed a lot. Emily didn't go to the funeral. That was no longer her story. Michael knew he had a biological father in another city. He knew it, but he wasn't interested. For him, his dad was James, the one who taught him how to ride a bike, read him bedtime stories, and comforted him when things were hard. "Mom," Michael called out, "can Tommy and I go to the movies tomorrow?" "You can. Homework first, though." "Yay!" He ran back to the ball. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky pink and gold. The kids laughed in the yard. It smelled like freshly cut grass and home. Emily closed her eyes and smiled. Sometimes she thought about the woman she used to be, the one sitting in a kitchen in New Jersey, stirring cold tea, enduring humiliation, swallowing hurt, afraid to leave. And every time, she thanked fate for that slap. Strange, right? A blow meant to break her instead woke her up, gave her strength, showed her the way out. Everything was right. Everything was exactly as it was meant to be.